In 1994, the science fiction genre was gifted a new icon in the form of Stargate. Though it received mixed reviews from critics, the film wowed audiences with its imaginative concepts, impressive effects, and spectacular world. The film became the sleeper hit of that year, and it didn't take long for the film's director Roland Emmerich and producer Dean Devlin to start entertaining the idea of a sequel. Although their big screen plans would never come to fruition, audiences were able to return to the Stargate universe on the small screen. Like Emmerich and Devlin, the film's rights holders MGM saw potential in turning Stargate from a sleeper hit into a multimedia franchise. The studio had acquired the rights to Stargate from the film's original production company, Coralco, after Coralco filed for bankruptcy following the disastrous release of Cutthroat Island. Despite Stargate's success on the big screen, MGM decided to pursue a television spin-off rather than a direct sequel. Word of this project soon travelled through the grapevine to arrive at the ears of writer-producers Brad Wright and Jonathan Glasner, who both separately approached MGM to work on the new show. The two had previously worked on MGM's revival of the sci-fi series The Outer Limits. Seeing their mutual enthusiasm for the material, MGM president John Sims asked them to work together on the pitch. Their pitch described an almost Star Trek-like show of a team exploring planets of the weak, but using the Stargate rather than a spaceship. It was during these pitch meetings that the show's title was created, when Sims asked Wright and Glasner if the team should be called SG1. Finding a home for Stargate SG1 proved to be quite painless, as MGM already had a good relationship with the premium network Showtime, which had broadcast The Outer Limits. Due to Stargate's move to television, the original film's stars James Spader and Kurt Russell were well outside the new show's budget. Even so, the series would need a marquee name to attract audience interest. It was Sims who approached Richard Dean Anderson with the possibility of taking over the role of Colonel Jack O'Neill from Kurt Russell. Richard Dean Anderson was a household name on American television thanks to his starring role in MacGyver. Anderson, who was joined by his producing partner Michael Greenberg, was interested in the project, but only if he could bring more humour to the O'Neill character.
Kurt Russell is just, he's a phenomenal guy, and he did a great job with it, with the character. But I knew just by looking at his hair that I couldn't do that. I mean, who can do that with their hair?
He also wanted SG1 to be more of an ensemble show as opposed to MacGyver, which Anderson effectively carried by himself. Thankfully, Wright, Glasner, and the higher-ups at MGM all agreed to Anderson's requests, and he was soon signed on as lead actor and executive producer. Taking over from James Spader in the role of Dr. Daniel Jackson was Canadian actor Michael Shanks. Unlike Richard Dean Anderson, Shanks chose to skew his performance far closer to his movie counterpart.
Well, the character came really easy because I just ripped off James Spader's role. Just ripped off all of his mannerisms and acting, and they liked that.
However, Shanks, being over a decade younger than Spader, meant his take on the character had a more youthful energy, with a quicker cadence and higher physical energy. Even so, Michael Shanks managed to replicate the character so well that when I was a kid, I actually thought Spader and Shanks were the same actor. Making up the other members of SG1 were Amanda Tapping as Samantha Carter and Christopher Judge as Teal'c. Tapping was no stranger to science fiction, having previously worked with Wright and Glasner on The Outer Limits, and had also had a guest role in The X-Files before joining Stargate. Christopher Judge was briefly a star player in American college football, but this was only a stepping stone to his long-term goal of becoming an actor. His first regular role was on the Canadian police drama Sirens, but before that, he had a guest role on MacGyver, where he shared a scene with Richard Dean Anderson. Another MacGyver veteran was Don S. Davis, who joined Stargate SG1 as General George Hammond. Terrell Rothery joined as a recurring cast member in the role of Dr. Janet Fraser. Alexis Cruz reprised his role as Skara from the movie, and later so did Eric Avari as Kasuf. Production took place in Vancouver, Canada, where a massive 3-story set was built of Stargate Command. The original Stargate prop from the movie was unfortunately unusable. Allegedly, after the movie wrapped production, the Stargate was left outside in the harsh California sun, which irreversibly bleached and warped the prop. Production designer Richard Heudelin's only use for the original Stargate was taking molds from it to create a new Stargate for the show. In total, 2 Stargates were built, one for the main studio set and another lighter Stargate which could be propped up on location. The production was a huge undertaking which necessitated massive set builds and elaborate costume designs on a near weekly basis. The special effects team also had their work cut out for them, with numerous large explosions required for many episodes. Their work also included Jaffa chest plates with built-in spark squibs and 2 staff weapons which opened and fired practically. Thankfully, this heavy workload rarely brought the mood of the production team down. Richard Dean Anderson made a conscious effort to maintain a fun and light-hearted atmosphere on set. This was an effort which paid off immensely, as the cast and crew hit it off almost immediately. At one point during production of the series, Kurt Russell was shooting the film at 3,000 miles to Graceland, in which he played Elvis Presley, at Vancouver Film Studios. The producers took the opportunity to invite the actor to the SG1 set, which he gladly accepted.
The before and after of Jack O'Neill.
Visual effects were provided primarily by Rainmaker Studios, with assistance from Image Engine. At this point, digital visual effects was becoming more commonplace in television productions, thanks to the pioneering effects efforts of Babylon 5. While the various Star Trek shows airing at the same time still made use of practical miniatures, Stargate SG1's effects were almost entirely digital. That is with the exception of the Asgard aliens, who were created using on-set puppetry. The voices for the Asgard were provided by regular cast members like Michael Shanks and Terrell Rothery.
So we were doing this one shot where if the camera is behind us and Thor and I are standing side by side looking at this big green screen of special effects, and whoever was controlling the puppet put Thor's arm up so it touched my bum. And it was quite funny. And I turned without even thinking and just smacked him. And there's this big resounding whack off the puppet. And then I apologized to the puppet. I mean, I don't even know what I was thinking. I went, oh my God, I'm sorry. Oh, you're a puppet.
The opening of the Stargate, nicknamed the Kawoosh, was initially filmed as a practical element like it was in the movie. However, this was later recreated using a computer simulation. Joel Goldsmith, son of legendary film composer Jerry Goldsmith, was brought on to score the show. His first task was reorchestrating David Arnold's main theme from the movie. He combined the main march with a short action cue heard during the film's final battle sequence. Whereas Arnold's original theme emphasized wonder and mystery, Goldsmith's version was more adventurous with a faster tempo and added percussion. The first episode of Stargate SG1, the feature-length Children of the Gods, premiered on the 27th of July, 1997.
When the gate is opened,
oh my God,
the adventure of a lifetime is only just beginning.
what are you doing? Don't touch it!
And the journey to exciting new worlds begins with the first step, Stargate SG1. A gateway to the imagination has been opened, and a new universe of action and adventure has been unleashed. Join Richard Dean Anderson as he continues to lead the way on the greatest journey of all time, Stargate SG1.
Although Children of the Gods is the debut of Stargate SG1, it also works as the sequel to the original movie, which inadvertently served the function of a pilot episode. As with many pilot episodes, there are many changes between the movie and the series proper. The Stargate movie, for all of its faults, did one thing very well, and that is convey a sense of wonder and exploration. However, it's clear from SG1's opening scene that the series is headed in a much different direction. A group of guards sits idly by, passing the time on their backwater assignment, blissfully unaware of the importance of the strange ring device in the room. That is, until the Stargate springs back to life, and suddenly armoured alien soldiers pour through, swiftly kidnapping one of the guards and dispatching the others. Soon Colonel Jack O'Neill is called out of retirement to lead a mission back to Abydos in the hopes of pulling off a rescue and finding out who this new enemy is. Stargate SG1 swaps mystery and exploration for pulp action-adventure. Speaking for myself, I've always lamented the strengths of the movie being lost in this change of creative direction, epitomised by the main antagonists of the show, the Goa'uld. Several retcons turn the movie's Ra from the alien tyrant of a single world with Lovecraftian overtones of cosmic horror into one of many rulers of a galaxy-spanning empire. The method of possession, implied in the movie to be Ra transferring his consciousness into another body, is also changed to alien parasites. In a relatively short amount of time, the lingering mysteries of the movie are all solved, leaving the viewer with a near complete history of the Goa'uld from their origins to the present. As someone who grew up watching the Stargate movie, and only recently became a fan of the shows, I've always felt a tinge of dissatisfaction with these retcons, and the in-depth explanations they led to. However, I know I'm likely in the minority in this view, as many of the most passionate Stargate fans became fans because of this series. And for good reason too. Despite my personal preferences, Stargate SG1 is an infectiously fun series which entertains and thrills. Unlike other more well-known sci-fi series, Stargate SG1 doesn't take long to find its footing. The benefit of building off the original movie allows SG1's premiere to cut to the chase. There's no need to establish what the Stargate is, where it came from, or what it does. Any newcomers are quickly brought up to speed by O'Neill and Hammond's first conversation, so they too can sit back and enjoy the adventure. Children of the Gods is also a well-presented TV movie. It's helped considerably by its access to visual effects shots and music cues from the original movie. Director Mario Azzopardi also makes sure to show off the expansive sets and locations with long, impressive crane shots. The production values continue to impress when the action moves to Abydos, with 2 more large interior sets. The presentation does take a hit when the film moves off Abydos and onto Chulak. The limits of the TV movie's resources become very obvious here. Canada is, of course, a beautiful country, but its locations lack the exoticism of the Nevada desert used in the movie. Throughout the series, it becomes almost comedic how many planets in the Stargate universe look like British Columbia. Then again, all of Star Trek's planets look like California, so this shortcoming can be forgiven. Even so, SG1's premiere episode has such an engrossing rhythm that the viewer is rarely taken out of the story by the 90s TV production values. Children of the Gods hits many of the major pulp sci-fi adventure beats in quick succession. Apophis is quickly established as the main arch-villain, new worlds are discovered and visited, our heroes are captured and then stage a daring escape, the whole thing just rattles along. This quick pace, while engaging, can rush through some important story beats however. While Teal'c's turn from Apophis's right-hand man to SG-1 ally is explored in greater depth later in the show, this turn in Children of the Gods feels quite sudden. The seeds are planted in the episode's first scene, with Teal'c being disillusioned with his role. Later it's made clear he has become numbed by Apophis's cruelty, so the setup is there. What's lacking is a pivotal moment to fully push Teal'c over the edge. O'Neill simply insists,
I can save these people! Help me. Many have said that.
To which Teal'c responds,
But you are the first I believe could do it!
Based on not much of anything. The following episode, The Enemy Within, even has O'Neill passionately vouching for Teal'c to General Hammond, despite the two only knowing each other for a short amount of time. Thankfully, both episodes have enough going on to keep the viewer engaged, even when the show is in a hurry to establish its status quo. Children of the Gods and The Enemy Within firmly establish Stargate SG-1 as an action show. Barely an episode goes by without a death-defying stunt, gun battle, or chase sequence. The show's stunt and special effects teams succeed brilliantly in crafting some thrilling and impressive action sequences. The cast is also in top form from the start. Despite some poorly aged dialogue.
And just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle.
The chemistry between Anderson, Tapping, Shanks, and Judge is palpable. Anderson nicely threads the needle with his performance in the first episode, establishing his more light-hearted take on the character while still maintaining some of Kurt Russell's seriousness.
You ever think of writing a book about your exploits in the line of duty?
I've thought about it, but then I'd have to shoot anyone that actually read it. That's a joke, sir.
Amanda Tapping pulls off an even more impressive performance as Samantha Carter. Not only is she responsible for rattling off most of the sci-fi technobabble, she also acts as the audience surrogate to some degree. Without Daniel Jackson, it's Carter who conveys a sense of wonder and excitement about going through the Stargate. At the same time, she also has to be convincing in the action sequences. Samantha Carter's character is needed to perform so many functions in the plot that it's a testament to Amanda Tapping's talents that she also succeeds in making Carter charming and likable.
You know, you really will like me when you get to know me.
Oh, I adore you already, Captain.
Meanwhile, Christopher Judge firmly establishes Teal'c through his physical and vocal presence alone. Despite his arc in the first episode being so rushed, Judge's commitment to the part and his impressive grasp of period dialogue leaves a strong impression on the audience. Michael Shanks is really the only member of the cast who doesn't firmly put his stamp on his character. In Children of the Gods, his uncanny imitation of James Spader's performance is impressive, but it wasn't until much later in the series that he made the role his own. By the end of its second episode, Stargate SG1 has already demonstrated its great potential as a show. The scope of the universe has widened, new foes and allies have been encountered, and the seeds of longer-running story threads have been firmly planted. With the iconic foursome of O'Neill, Jackson, Carter, and Teal'c together, SG1 steps through the Stargate for their first year of adventures. Paralleling the original movie, critical reception to Children of the Gods was mixed, but it was a hit in the ratings. Showtime made a real event out of the premiere, following up the feature-length broadcast with a behind-the-scenes special with previews of upcoming episodes. The first episode generated Showtime's highest ratings ever for a series premiere up to that time. The network had initially ordered 22 episodes for a first season, but after such a successful debut, they increased this order to 44 episodes. For the time being, Stargate SG1 was a bona fide hit. Unfortunately, Season 1 has a somewhat slow start. After the fast-paced thrills of Children of the Gods and the contained suspense of The Enemy Within, first-season efforts like Emancipation, The Broca Divide, and The First Commandment feel rote by comparison, episode concepts which were done before or better by established science fiction shows. Things start to pick up around the middle of the season when Stargate leans back into its unique strengths. Episodes like The Nox and Thor's Hammer expand the Stargate universe even further, enriching the show's developing lore and folding in mythological influences beyond ancient Egypt. The later reveal of the Asgard is particularly memorable.
Oh my god.
I am the actual one, whom you know as Thor.
However, this mythological influence goes beyond simple aesthetics, leading to richly emotional storytelling in The Torment of Tantalus. While reviewing archival footage of the Stargate, O'Neill and Jackson are shocked to discover a previously successful attempt at activating the gate. The following expedition resulted in the loss of one Ernest Littlefield, fiancé to Catherine Langford, daughter of the Stargate's discoverer and the woman who recruited Daniel Jackson into the program. Now equipped with the knowledge needed to trace Ernest's whereabouts, Langford joins SG1 on a rescue mission. In a departure from its usual fare, The Torment of Tantalus is less action-adventure and more of a science fiction fable about obsession and regret. The story repeatedly sets up a character's desire, only for the payoff to not quite measure up in some way. Langford is reunited with her long-lost love after many decades, only for Ernest to dismiss her and the SG team as hallucinations. Daniel is shown the find of his career, the embodiment of all of his passions, only to risk losing it a short time later. It's a dark and ponderous story, one which is stolen by its two guest performances. Elizabeth Hoffman as Catherine Langford, and Keane Curtis as Ernest Littlefield. Hoffman's take on Langford differs from the movie's original, more of a no-nonsense straight talker while still possessing a sense of warmth and friendliness. Ernest, meanwhile, despite his isolation, is less the expected crazed loner and more of a quirky hermit. By the time SG1 finds him, he has spent more time living in this desolate castle than he ever did on Earth, yet he's been unable to move on from the life he lost. He is trapped within arm's reach of what he craves, but without any ability to use it, aptly mirroring the mythological figure of the episode's title. Daniel Jackson comes close to repeating Ernest's mistake. He becomes so obsessed with acquiring knowledge that he risks becoming trapped there himself. It is therefore fitting that Ernest is the one to break Daniel from his obsession.
I have to finish this.
It's not worth it.
This is.
Nothing is.
Well, our history as a people would be very different if everyone felt that way.
No prize is worth attaining if you can never share it. There would be no point. Believe me. I know.
In true Stargate fashion, the episode climaxes in a flight back to the Stargate as the ancient structure collapses around them, Jackson and O'Neill narrowly escaping before the castle is destroyed completely. The Torment of Tantalus is a quieter, more ponderous story than is typical for Stargate, but it manages to avoid pretension by keeping its focus squarely on the characters. This focus leads to more great outings in the first season, such as the Teal'c-centric Bloodlines. When Teal'c receives word that his son Ryak is to be implanted with a larval Goa'uld, he and SG1 journey to Chulak to rescue Ryak and gain valuable intel on the enemy. Bloodlines is yet another quintessential Stargate SG1 adventure, with plenty of well-staged action. It also introduces the incomparable Master Braytak, played to excellence by Tony Amendola.
Not bad for a man of 133.
But it's Teal'c's journey which makes the episode stand out. In a sense, the story of Bloodlines hinges on Teal'c's hubris. At first, his mission is to stage a triumphant rescue of his wife and son. After all, if he could escape Apophis's rule, why can't he do the same for his family? And with SG1 and Master Braytak at his side, what's to stop him? However, Teal'c is soon hit by the reality of his actions. He finds his family exiled and destitute. It's Teal'c's wife Drayak who wants Ryak implanted for his safety.
Did you see where I am raising your son? Do you know what I have endured to convince the priests that we are still loyal? They were about to lift the banishment so that we could return to the city.
Despite being confronted with this reality, Teal'c refuses to accept it, even going so far as to kidnap his son, an act which almost gets Ryak killed. Only then does the truth finally get through to Teal'c.
I'm sorry, my son. It is I who must do this to you. Forgive me, my son.
Bloodlines is so effective as an episode because it manages to have its cake and eat it too. We get plenty of great Stargate action, and yet the ultimate lesson Teal'c learns is that he can't just shoot his way to freedom. The oppression of the Goa'uld goes beyond simply having more advanced technology. His people are enslaved by, but also dependent on the Goa'uld. Going in guns blazing may end up doing more harm than good. This idea is also reflected in the B-plot of the episode. While Teal'c, O'Neill, and Braytak go after Teal'c's family, Carter and Jackson attempt to steal a symbiote for study.
Daniel, what are you thinking?
Just that every single one of these infant Goa'ulds will one day take a human life.
While cathartic in the moment, Daniel's actions ultimately harm his mission. After Teal'c is forced to give up his symbiote to save his son, Jackson and Carter have to scrub their mission to save Teal'c. Daniel's feelings in the moment may have been justified, but the lesson imparted to both he and Teal'c at the end of the episode is that this is a conflict they must fight with their heads as well as their hearts. Having made themselves a target of the Goa'uld, Season 1 sees the inevitable response from Apophis, an invasion of Earth itself. In a clever use of the alternate reality concept, the episode There But For the Grace of God gives the characters and the viewer a glimpse of the worst case scenario. While the action is confined to the standing sets of the SGC, the episode does a good job of conveying the devastation inflicted by the invasion.
Every one of those red dots is a destroyed city.
And the episode still manages to have fun with its concept, to play scenes which otherwise wouldn't be possible in the series. Granted, humanity can put up a fight, but Daniel's brief trip to an alternate reality makes it clear that in open battle, Earth is completely outmatched.
We're all in very big trouble. They're coming. They're coming.
With such a great setup, the episode Politics comes at the worst possible moment. Not only does the conniving and self-serving Kinsley swoop in to shut down the Stargate program, but he does so during a tiresome clip show episode. Politics does factor into the ongoing story at least, as Kinsley is successful in shutting down the Stargate program. Even so, placing this kind of episode here stifles some of the anticipation for the season finale. Within the Serpent's grasp sees SG1 go rogue to intercept Apophis's invasion force and destroy it before it reaches Earth. The episode and its Season 2 opening follow-up within the Serpent's Lair aptly display all of the show's strengths up to this point. The solid action, the sense of humor.
What now?
Now we die.
Well, that's a bad plan.
And focus on character. Even though the viewer knows deep down SG1 will likely make it out alive, the strong writing does a good job of throwing out curveballs. Initially, SG1 hopes to cripple Apophis's forces before they launch, only to discover they're on board a ship already on its way to Earth. This plan then turns into a suicide mission as SG1 aims to destroy the ship while they're on board, only for a second mothership to render this plan redundant. Like any good adventure plot, it forces the viewer to wonder how exactly the heroes will get out of this one alive. The personal stakes of the action increase further when Jackson is mortally wounded in a firefight and left behind while SG1 infiltrates the second ship.
Just go! I'll stay and watch your back.
In the end, it comes down to the wire. Jackson manages to heal himself and dive through the Stargate, while the rest of SG1 and Braytak escape in some hijacked gliders just in the nick of time.
Space monkey. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this video and you'd like to see more, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, or you can join me on Patreon. Making these kinds of feature-length videos takes a long time, which means long gaps between uploads, which the YouTube algorithm does not like. So if you want to help me make more videos like this, follow the link below to see retrospective reviews early, uncut, and ad-free. If you aren't able to, I appreciate you watching my work on YouTube all the same. The rest of Stargate SG1's second year feels more confident in its identity. Retreads of territory firmly covered by the likes of Star Trek take a back seat in favour of Stargate's unique strengths. Having dealt a blow to Apophis, SG1 faces off against an ever-expanding roster of new Goa'uld system lords. Despite my quibbles, the Goa'uld make for effective recurring antagonists. The change from body-hopping consciousness to slimy brainworms is a clever way of summing up the themes of the story. For all the pomposity and arrogance of the system lords who insist they should be worshipped as gods, they are literally nothing more than parasites. Their empire is built on the achievements of greater minds. However, I've always felt there was a missed opportunity in expanding the roster of villains for the show, that being one of character. While the system lords vary in design, they all essentially have the same personality. All the system lords are arrogant, pompous, and cruel, When they are challenged, they all throw out the same threats and protests, right down to their vocabulary. The main variation comes in the physical threat each of them poses. Nearty carries out stealthy assassinations, Hathor seduces and manipulates, and Baal plots and schemes from the shadows. While this leads to some solid action throughout the show, few of the Goa'uld become truly great characters. Though the Goa'uld are the main villains, many of Season 2's episodic outings don't rely on them to drive their plots. Unlike Star Trek, Stargate's internal logic is remarkably consistent across SG1 and its later spin-offs. Despite the retcons with the Stargate movie, the rules of what specific technologies or aliens can and can't do are strictly adhered to. This discipline on the part of the writers leads to some incredibly creative plotting. For example, the plots of several episodes hinge on Stargate Command or an enemy weaponizing the Stargate itself in some way, thanks to the established rules of how the device works. It's a clever way to save money by confining the action to the standing sets, but it also cranks up the tension, turning everyday acts like dialing the gate into gripping races against time. And no episode showcases this ingenuity better than A Matter of Time. When Stargate Command loses contact with SG-10, they discover the planet the team was sent to is now orbiting a black hole. With the stranded team beyond saving due to time dilation, they attempt to shut the gate down, but they soon realize the gate is projecting the black hole's influence into the SGC. If they can't break the connection in time, the entire planet will be pulled into the Stargate and consumed by the black hole. While most of the time the SG teams contend with galactic despots, in A Matter of Time the enemies are the laws of physics. Time dilation is, for lack of a better term, such an inherently cool concept, and Stargate utilizes it to its fullest. The effect has overtones of cosmic horror as time and space within the SGC become more and more warped as the episode goes on. Yet this effect is also what allows the SG team to ultimately solve their problem. Thanks to time moving slower within the base, Carter has enough time to work on her calculations, and Hammond and Teal'c have enough time to acquire the resources needed to execute the planned solution. In that sense, the episode resembles the structure and themes of a classic disaster movie. It's a story which respects the awesome natural power the main characters have confronted, but it also commends human ingenuity and resourcefulness. This time the action isn't a gun battle or temple run, but a physics-defying set piece. By this point, the gravitational pull from the gate is so strong, O'Neill and a Special Forces soldier have to rappel down to it to set off a shape charge. It's fantastically staged with some clever trick shots establishing the warped gravity of the space. Also in true disaster movie form, anything that can go wrong does go wrong. Shattering glass slices up the two men, their lines snap, the time they have to escape the blast radius rapidly ticks down, it's all great stuff. A Matter of Time is a terrifically engaging piece of high-concept sci-fi, which wows with its action just as much as it wows with its ideas.
Well, this might be a little difficult to accept, but since you reported for duty yesterday, 2 weeks have actually gone by. And go sleep in.
In their ongoing struggle against the Goa'uld system lords, SG1 encounters some new allies in Season 2, including the aforementioned Asgard, as well as the Tok'ra. In their two-part introductory episode, SG1 encounters a resistance group of humans who are willingly joined with symbiotes. Though they would make for a powerful new ally, SG1 and the Tok'ra fail to see eye to eye on one crucial matter.
Since you won't take new hosts by force, most of the time the Goa'uld dies with the host.
And this is what is about to happen to Selmak.
Unless one of you wishes to volunteer to serve as a host.
I'm gonna pass on that.
The Tok'ra and their wildly different culture and philosophy add some fascinating shades of grey to the larger arc of the series. Up until this point, symbiotes and the implantation of them are portrayed as something monstrous, so the idea that someone would willingly subject themselves to such a thing turns the characters' and viewers' assumptions on their heads. While the Goa'uld Empire has overtones of a feudal society which we can recognize, the Tok'ra are something truly alien. Despite their insistence that the joining of a symbiote with a host is fully consensual and both parties are enriched by their experience, there's still an instinctual squeamish reaction to seeing a serpentine creature worm its way into someone's head.
I mean, if you're so disgusted by the very thought of blending, then how can we be associated with one another? I mean, it's obvious that you have distaste for our very being.
Meeting the Tok'ra confronts SG1 with a kind of prejudice they may not have been aware they harbored. Their hostility towards the Goa'uld should be the result of what the Goa'uld do, not what they are. Once again, the core conflict of the episode is resolved through a character-focused story. This time the story is centered on Samantha Carter and her relationship with her father. Jacob Carter was first introduced in the episode Secrets. Among the plotlines of that episode, it established Sam and Jacob's estranged status, a relationship which is only weakened further by Sam's work on the Stargate program.
I'm talking about getting you into NASA, Sam.
There's a waiting list a mile long.
Not for you.
Dad, you can't do that.
I did.
Without talking to me first.
You're telling me you don't want this?
The work I am doing right now is very important to me.
It's not your dream.
Let's just leave it at that, please.
At least talk to the man. Do that much for me.
I knew sooner or later you'd make this about you.
And unlike most Stargate episodes, the plot lines in Secrets aren't resolved by the end. Not only are Sam and her father still estranged by the end, but Sam is hit by some devastating news.
I have cancer, Sam.
What?
Lymphoma. I was hoping to stick around long enough to see you become an astronaut. Sweetheart, nothing in the world can live up to the chance of actually going to space.
I'm sorry, I can't.
This thing's gonna go on for months, so you don't have to check up on me tomorrow or anything.
Dad, please don't go like this.
Congratulations on the medal. I'm sure you deserve it.
In the Tok'ra, to prevent her father's death, she reveals the Stargate program to him in the hopes that his life may be saved by joining him with a symbiote. This is also one of many instances where General Hammond shines. In his first episode, Hammond is a stalwart commander who makes harsh decisions and stands by them, repeatedly clashing with O'Neill. But as the show goes on, Hammond reveals himself as a loyal friend to all those under his command. In the Tok'ra, he demonstrates that underlying warmth again when he allows Carter to reveal the Stargate program to her father.
I travel to other planets, much farther away than any astronaut goes.
What, like in simulations?
No, in reality.
We discovered a piece of alien technology. It can send us to thousands of planets all over the galaxy.
You're not kidding, are you?
No.
Holy Hannah.
Later, under the threat of a Goa'uld bombardment, Jacob has to decide if he should accept the Tok'ra symbiote. Not only does this moment help ally humanity and the Tok'ra, but it also brings Jacob closer to his daughter.
You gotta know one thing. How proud I am of you. Even when I thought you were this whiz satellite geek. I was proud.
However, in a bit of dramatic irony, the Carters, having finally repaired their relationship, are forced to separate again as Jacob goes to fight and live alongside the Tok'ra. Throughout the rest of the series, Jacob Carter, played wonderfully by Carmen Argenziano, becomes a dependable ally in any daring plan with slim odds of success. The Tok'ra is also an example of the show's writers finding new ways to refresh the main arc of the series. Considering how frequently the Goa'uld feature in the series, there's a definite risk of them becoming stale or too easy to defeat. Thankfully, this is a pitfall SG1 walks right up to, but successfully avoids each time. This is particularly evident in episodes like the Serpent song. Having defeated Apophis, SG1 are stunned when their vanquished foe asks for asylum from the other system lords. Though they take him in, Apophis slowly dies when his demand for a new host body is refused. What follows is an acting marathon from Peter Williams as he tries desperately to convince his captors to save his life.
In exchange for all the knowledge of the Goa'uld, the secrets of star travel, our weapons,
Go to hell.
There's a mix of emotions in watching Apophis's final moments. On the one hand, seeing such an arrogant and cruel tyrant brought down to such a low level is cathartic. On the other hand, there's something pitiable in seeing a man who claims to be a literal god confronted with his death.
I am afraid.
But the most surprising turn is when Apophis's original host emerges.
Simui! Simui!
That's ancient Egyptian. This must be the host.
She won't die! She won't die!
Suddenly the characters and the viewer are reminded of the human cost of the Goa'uld's tyranny. While the members of SG1 have their grievances with Apophis, they pale in comparison to the nightmare the host has been put through for the past few millennia.
Shiyak Hanoisun. Hehu. Hehu. I told him this funerary statue would take his last breath and carry his soul back to Egypt.
Yet despite this small act of solemnity, the closing scene of the episode is another reminder of the depths of Goa'uld cruelty.
Sokar has a sarcophagus in his possession. With it, he can revive Apophis even from death, and torture him as long as he pleases.
Stargate SG1's second season proved to be a step up from the already solid first year. However, the two-part finale, a confrontation with the System Lord Hathor, is disappointing. Part 1, Out of Mind, is yet another clip show episode. Part 2, Into the Fire, gets things back on track with more action, but generally it's not nearly as impactful as the first season's finale. This feeling of dissatisfaction crops up in several other Season 3 outings. Make no mistake, the season as a whole is still strong, with many enjoyable one-off stories. There's the action-packed Foothold, which pits Carter and Teal'c against the rest of the SGC after they've been taken over by an alien incursion. And the touching family adventure of the Crystal Skull.
Goodbye, Grandpa.
However, the Goa'uld arc makes up the weaker portion of the season. Despite the successful shakeups in Season 2, the Goa'uld conflict comes dangerously close to stagnation in Season 3. This isn't helped by some strangely delivered payoffs to story threads established in the show's very first episode. Daniel Jackson looking for a way to free his wife from Goa'uld control, and O'Neill hoping to do the same for his friend Skara, are arcs which maintain the personal stakes alongside the more epic scope of the story. What's odd, however, is how these personal arcs are concluded. Not in grand finales, but instead in episodic outings with no significant placement in the season.
I love you, Danielle.
I am sorry, Daniel Jackson.
I love you too. Much better.
This oddity also crops up later in one of Teal'c's arcs. Teal'c's momentary nemesis Tanith, a Goa'uld agent who murdered Teal'c's lover Shinnok, is unceremoniously killed off in the pre-credits teaser of a later episodic.
Tanith is dead.
That's nice. I'm happy for you.
This kind of thing leaves a lot of Season 3 feeling somewhat aimless. This struggle to keep the main story arc fresh is most apparent in the two-parter Jolinar's Memories and The Devil You Know. When Jacob is trapped in a hellish Goa'uld prison, SG1 leads a rescue operation aided by memories Carter inherited from a dying Tok'ra symbiote. The two-parter is filled with a lot of potential which the show unfortunately isn't able to fulfill. This is a pair of episodes where SG1 have to fight their way out of the closest thing there is to hell and face the devil himself. This premise, paired with an aesthetic ripped right from a Frank Frazetta painting, would lead one to expect another spectacular SG1 action-adventure. Instead, the focus is mostly given to Martouf's lingering feelings for his lost love Jolinar, and his current feelings for Carter. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but Martouf is such a bland and uninteresting character, it really drags much of the episode down. Even so, the conclusion of Jolinar's memories is notable for the surprise return of an old enemy.
I will reclaim my real name. Apophis.
I have mixed feelings on this. While Peter Williams is great in the role, and part of Season 3's issues is the lack of a chief villain, this two-parter already remedied that problem with the introduction of Sokar. In contrast to the shallow pomposity of other System Lords, Sokar is genuinely chilling. While other System Lords decorate themselves in gleaming armor or garish robes, Sokar is dressed in a dark cloak, the hood of which shrouds his pale face and milky eyes. While other System Lords orate loudly in booming voices, Sokar's power is communicated by how calm and measured his speech is.
Tell me, and I will grant you your wish, and brand you Lord of the Underworld.
All in all, Sokar could have been perfectly fitting as the new chief villain of the show. Instead, he is swapped out for Apophis, who rebels against him and gains control of Sokar's ships and armies, which threatens the balance of power in the galaxy. This feels redundant to me, as that threat already existed with Sokar. The show simply swapped out a new villain posing this threat with a familiar villain posing the same threat. It gives the series its big bad guy again, but perhaps at the cost of something more creatively fresh. Thankfully, a new recurring foe is introduced at the end of Season 1, the Replicators. Just as SG1 are about to go on some leave, O'Neill is suddenly beamed away to an Asgard ship. Expecting to find his old ally Thor, he instead encounters a swarm of insect-like machines which are quickly devouring the ship. Taking inspiration from the work of nanotechnologist K. Eric Drexler and mathematician John Van Neumann, the Replicators offer a change of pace in antagonists for SG1. Much like the Borg in Star Trek, the Replicators have a relentlessness to them. Nemesis, like all Replicator-focused episodes, combines two of Stargate's main strengths as a show: well-staged action and creative plotting engineered by in-universe consistency. Nemesis is packed with escalating tension as the Replicators spread like a virus throughout the spacecraft. Bullets hold them at bay for only so long. Instead, the solution is for SG1 to crash the ship into Earth's atmosphere, riding the flaming wreck until they have enough power to escape through the Stargate. The Season 4 opener Small Victories is even stronger, which features surviving Replicators from the crash taking over a Russian submarine. Fighting the Replicators on a spaceship was already bad enough, but the claustrophobic interior of a submarine makes the battle even more desperate. Echoing James Cameron's Aliens, Daniel Jackson is forced to watch helplessly as the machines trap and then overwhelm O'Neill and Teal'c. O'Neill dropping his usually flippant attitude helps to sell the danger even more.
Listen to me! We are not getting out of here! Mission accomplished! Blow it! Jack! Davis! Give the order!
Once again, Carter engineers another fiendishly clever solution to save the team just in the nick of time, but it's made clear that the Replicators pose an even greater threat than the Goa'uld. Thankfully, they're confined to another galaxy, for now. Although Apophis may have returned as the main villain of the show, Season 4 surprisingly changes gears by focusing many of its episodes on espionage and intrigue rather than space opera. What's most refreshing, however, is how this change turns a lot of our attention back to Earth. Now 4 years into the Stargate mission, this season carries with it a sense of how SG1's missions are starting to change things on Earth. This is seen in episodes like Watergate, which sees SG1 discover a rival Russian Stargate program.
It is quite beautiful.
What?
The rapid pressurization might cause your ears to block.
And Chain Reaction, where SG1 comes into conflict with the mysterious organization known as the Trust.
I'm not leaving till I get what I came for.
Oh. And what are you going to do?
Well, I was thinking about shooting you.
The Trust was first hinted at during the Season 2 episode Touchstone, and later in Season 3's Shades of Grey, a rogue organization hoping to exploit the Stargate program to obtain advanced technology by any means they deem necessary. The Trust arc touches on a consistently strong point of conflict throughout the show concerning the very purpose of the Stargate program itself. On the one hand, Carter and Jackson view their mission primarily as one of exploration. On the other hand are O'Neill and Teal'c, who view their mission primarily as a way of acquiring new technologies to strengthen their respective worlds against the Goa'uld. Although the pitch for Stargate SG1 was essentially Star Trek without the spaceship, the absence of a prime directive and its contemporary setting make it markedly different from the adventures of the USS Enterprise. Friend of the channel Daniel Orrit put it succinctly in our commentary of the original movie.
Compared to like Star Trek with its prime directive and all that, I love the fact that Stargate, the first thing humans do as soon as they're at like minutes within getting onto the galactic stage for the first time is kill the head of state of the biggest nation in the galaxy and just bugger off. Like immediately chuck a tarpaulin over the Stargate and just leave it.
And they're also just perfect. Like, oh, do you want machine guns? We've got plenty of those.
Yeah, all your gods are fake. Here are machine guns.
These clashing viewpoints often lead to questions of how far the ends justify the means, as well as the moral responsibility SG1 has taken upon itself as galactic liberators. This moral conflict is also at the heart of episodes like The Other Side.
You said yourself that we could not and would not devote the resources necessary to win a war.
Obviously, I was speaking in terms of committing military assets, human lives.
But there was a moral issue.
Yes.
But if we can provide the power of all that and more in the form of water, then the moral issue just evaporates. We're about to turn the tide of a world war that we know nothing about against an enemy that we know nothing about. Is that the right way to get their technology? Yes, but is it the right thing to do?
As well as the Tolan story arc.
I assume you want weapons technology.
One of those ion cannons would be nice.
And for what will you use such a cannon?
To defend ourselves against the Goa'uld?
But our research shows that you are far more likely to use our technology against enemies on your own planet.
These stories, as well as those surrounding the Trust, also serve to hold up a mirror to our characters, to make them question if their actions are always right. This is especially effective with O'Neill, whose military mindset often clashes with Jackson's more philosophical stances. This is where I have to state another controversial minority opinion because, despite how strong the cast is, Colonel Jack O'Neill is, in my opinion, the weakest. This is not to say Richard Dean Anderson puts in a poor performance or the character is overall weak, it's just that next to the other characters, O'Neill is the least interesting of the main team. Like his movie counterpart, Michael Shanks' Dr. Daniel Jackson is notable for breaking his nerdy archetype in some quite interesting ways. Despite his hurried speech pattern, he isn't a bumbling dork, but is instead highly confident and passionate. In later seasons, he even looks and acts the part of an action hero on par with O'Neill. Amanda Tapping's Samantha Carter is hyper-competent, smart, good-looking, and able to handle herself in a firefight, yet she's also soft-spoken and humble, maintaining an innate likability even when she's given the unenviable task of rattling off the majority of the show's sci-fi technobabble. Christopher Judge's Teal'c could so easily have become a Worf clone, but Judge balances his considerable physical presence with a sageness which is underpinned by his impossibly deep voice. His character feels almost Tolkien-esque in his quiet nobility and unshakable sense of honor, as well as loyalty to his friends. O'Neill, by contrast, feels far too close to the Han Solo archetype, a swaggering, wisecracking man of action who laughs in the face of danger and saves the world like it's no big deal. The deeper element, that this quipping persona is merely a front to hide the lingering pain over the loss of his son, is touched on and dispensed with quite early, leaving just the archetypal personality without as much depth. There's also the tired jocks versus nerds dynamic between O'Neill, Carter, and Jackson. However, this shortcoming is more a result of aging poorly than poor writing. Having a character to cut through the sci-fi technobabble and laser focus on what's important can be a valuable tool for a writer. What rubs me the wrong way about O'Neill is how he not only fails to understand basic and well-communicated information, but also seems to look down on Jackson and Carter having passion for their fields of interest. Richard Dean Anderson is certainly far more definitive as O'Neill than Kurt Russell, and Anderson's light-hearted influence on the series was a positive. However, at times O'Neill's flippant attitude can detract from the drama of many episodes. A prime example of this comes in the aforementioned Bloodlines. Teal'c returns to his homeworld and is confronted by the possibility that his wife and son have been murdered. While Christopher Judge wows with a committed and sensitive performance, O'Neill stands off to the side looking like he's been waiting for a bus too long. It's also worth saying that despite O'Neill's image as a quip machine, the vast majority of his lines aren't that sharp or witty. He comes out with some gems now and then.
The vehicle performed within expected parameters.
Woohoo! Sorry, sir. I couldn't help but get caught up in Teal'c's enthusiasm.
But for the most part, his shtick is made up of sarcasm and awkward pauses.
Sokar is a Goa'uld of ancient times. He was once ruler of the System Lords, but was defeated by an alliance of Goa'uld many centuries ago.
Yeah, basically he was the original Satan.
Oh, isn't that special?
Ironically, while Kurt Russell was at his best in the Stargate movie as a winking badass, Richard Dean Anderson is at his best in the few instances he takes things seriously. All that being said, the humour Anderson brought to the O'Neill character, and to the show as a whole, does shine in the fan-favourite episode Window of Opportunity. While exploring some ancient ruins on a planet ravaged by solar flares, O'Neill, Teal'c, and alien archaeologist Malachi are struck by an energy wave which sends them into a time loop. The only way to escape the loop is to translate the ancient writings on an altar found in the ruins. Time loops as a concept were relatively new outside of literature at the time. Even so, Star Trek The Next Generation and The X-Files both beat Stargate to the punch with their time loop episodes. But while those shows used the concept to tell dark, suspenseful stories, SG1 differentiates itself by using the concept for comedy.
Every time we loop, Daniel asks me a question, and I wasn't listening the first time.
You're not the only one who must endure some discomfort, O'Neill.
Sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were there.
The details of why the time loop began and how to stop it are immaterial. The highlight of the episode comes in the middle when O'Neill and Teal'c realize that as long as they are trapped in the loop, they are free from the consequences of their actions. The following Groundhog Day-like montage is a delight as the two run amok in the SGC.
Colonel O'Neill, what the hell are you doing? In the middle of my backswing!
Having O'Neill and Teal'c be the ones stuck in the loop rather than the more intellectual Carter and Jackson is what makes this light-hearted touch work so well. They don't escape the loop via some technical trick, as Carter and Jackson would have done, but by reasoning with Malachi, the instigator of the loop, on an emotional level.
I lost my son! I know! And as much as I could never live that over again. Could you?
Window of Opportunity is Stargate SG1 at its most charming and fun. It also demonstrates how the show's unique creative vision can make old ideas feel fresh again.
Well, General, you know what they say. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
For the season finale, SG1 once again contend with their old enemy Apophis. When the Goa'uld agent Tanith reveals the location of the Tok'ra's main base to Apophis, SG1 races to evacuate while also using the opportunity to set a trap. Thanks to considerable advances in visual effects technology, Exodus manages to be even more epic in scope than SG1's first showdown with Apophis without being a rehash. The episode graces us with multiple space battles, dogfights, and chases across the entire star system. But it's SG1's trap for Apophis which is the true highlight. Using a spare Stargate, the team dials the black hole from the episode A Matter of Time and hurls it into the nearest star, forcing it to go supernova and wipe out the entire system, Apophis' fleet included. Action, spectacle, and drama are at their height in this finale and its follow-up enemies. Not only do SG1 and the Tok'ra face down a Goa'uld fleet, but Teal'c also chases down his new nemesis Tanith, and SG1 has to deal with Teal'c itself when he is briefly brainwashed to siding with Apophis again. It's a truly stunning two-parter. But by the end, with most of his fleet destroyed and his ship hurled into another galaxy, Apophis finally meets his end at the hands of the Replicators. Once again, the show was without a main villain, but thankfully the writing for the 5th season doesn't repeat old mistakes. Instead, it takes the opportunity to build up a new impending threat. Season 5 features many terrific standalone episodes. There's the claustrophobic horror of The Tomb.
Sir, we found the creature. It's dead.
That's good news.
The only problem is the symbiote's no longer inside it. That leaves Daniel, Major Valarin, and... well, the two of you, sir.
The tense race against time in Failsafe.
You know, I'd like to take this opportunity to say that this is a very poorly designed bomb, and I think we should say something to somebody when we get back.
I agree, sir.
And the fourth wall-breaking 100th episode celebration of the series itself, Wormhole Extreme.
We've already established that 1 shot stuns and 2 shots kills. Nick just shot everybody twice.
So 3 shots disintegrates them.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that, because that is quite possibly the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say.
Soon after this amusing diversion, Stargate SG1 restates the threat of the Goa'uld once again in the two-parter Summit and Last Stand. Daniel Jackson goes undercover at a meeting of the most powerful system lords in the hopes of using a Tok'ra poison to assassinate them all. However, matters are complicated when a possessed former lover of Daniel's, Sarah Gardner, arrives at the summit as the herald of a powerful new threat, Anubis. At this point in the show, SG1 seemed to be on a winning streak. Having taken out Apophis a second time and fended off the Replicators, the mission in Summit would seem like a slam dunk. This is why the two-parter makes sure to humble the characters severely. Not only does Daniel fail in his original mission, but he even fails in his impromptu one. He refuses to carry out the plan when the Osiris-possessed Sarah shows up, then he holds back to wait for Anubis, and after he's discovered, he's forced to leave Sarah behind anyway. The System Lords are not only not harmed, but they are stronger, having allied themselves with Anubis. Meanwhile, the Tok'ra fall under direct attack from another of Anubis' servants. Unlike previous battles, this attack is devastating. The action is grittier than usual, emphasizing the destructive power of Goa'uld weaponry and the loss of life sustained by the Tok'ra and the SG teams. The events serve as a wake-up call to the characters, who risked becoming complacent due to their recent victories. This complacency is well highlighted in a small scene between Daniel and a System Lord servant.
But what if they do not care what we have seen and heard? Because when they are done eating the symbiotes, they plan to put the leftovers in us.
You should only be so fortunate. I have served my master so well for so long in the hope that one day he would grant me the honor of implantation.
The honor?
Yes.
Having fought the Goa'uld for so long, Daniel seems almost personally offended by the idea of anyone still revering them. But after Last Stand, the Goa'uld's grip on power is still very much intact. It's clear that despite all they have achieved, SG1 still has a long way to go. SG1's other recurring foe, the Replicators, also make an unexpected appearance this season in Menace. On a planet desolated long ago by war, the team discovers a dormant android they later come to know as Reese. Talking with Reese, a great many questions soon arise. What happened to the planet? Why is she the only survivor? And why are there replicator blocks near where she was found? As Daniel gets to know the childlike android more, these questions are soon given some disturbing answers.
Remember when you said you wished that you could have more fun?
Yeah?
Don't be afraid. It's just a toy.
As much as I begrudge Stargate SG1's tendency to over-explain its lore, for example with the Goa'uld, revealing this as the origin of the replicators creates more story possibilities rather than closing them off. Knowing the replicators were created as playthings by a child gives them an unexpectedly tragic quality. It's also an opportunity to highlight more of the team's prejudices, particularly O'Neill's. Unlike Daniel, O'Neill refuses to see Reese as a living person, and inadvertently repeats the mistakes of those on her homeworld. By failing to see past her artificiality and treating her as an other, O'Neill unwittingly brings about the scenario he fears the most, as Reese soon turns her toys against the base. Ironically, the machines only become a threat because of a failure to treat them with some humanity.
You didn't have to shoot her.
Yes, I did.
They didn't stop because you shot her, they stopped because she told them to.
Look. I'm sorry. But this is the way it had to go down. And you know it.
This is SG-19er. Commence sweep. I want every one of those damn things out of here.
As SG-1's 5th season entered production, fans were met with a two-punch combo of bad news. Firstly, Showtime had decided to cancel the series due to declining ratings. The impact of this news was heavily mitigated thanks to the Sci-Fi Channel stepping in to renew the series relatively quickly. Secondly, Michael Shanks had announced he would be leaving the series, and there was nothing to soften this blow. There have been various rumours and theories surrounding Shanks' departure over the years, but the actor has since said that the chief reason was creative dissatisfaction. Daniel Jackson's main arc of rescuing his wife from the clutches of Apophis was wrapped up in Season 3. The following season began a new arc, but it was effectively a repeat of the first. A love interest is taken over by a Goa'uld, and Daniel seeks to free her. As Jackson developed as a character, he also moved further away from his scientific roots and more towards an action role. I previously mentioned this as a strength of the character, as it subverts the usual nerdy archetype. However, an unintended consequence of this is that Jackson starts to become a lot more like O'Neill. Not only does Daniel get more comfortable with guns, but he also develops a similar sense of humour.
If you're implying that everything Russian-made is of poor quality, actually, the sub is Swiss.
So they occasionally catch fire, but they keep perfect time. Sorry. I think I've been hanging around Jack O'Neill too much.
The asteroid's core is composed almost entirely of naquita.
Of course it is.
It makes up about 45% of the total mass.
Of course it does.
This character change possibly contributed to Shanks feeling as though he was no longer an important part of the series. Outside of his function of translating ancient texts, which could easily be done by another character, it could be argued Daniel Jackson lost his uniqueness as a character. Therefore, during the production of Season 5, Shanks asked to be written out of the show. In the penultimate episode of the season, Meridian, Daniel Jackson suffers a slow and painful death from radiation poisoning. In his last moments, he is given a choice to die on Earth or ascend to a higher plane of existence. In a moving scene, he says farewell to the friend who has been with him since the beginning.
You just giving up? No. No, I'm not giving up, believe me. I have to go now. Everything's gonna be fine.
Reflecting the feelings of the production team, Season 5 eschews the normal cliffhanger in favour of something more poignant, but also uncertain. Though there would be more adventures through the Stargate, could the show endure at its new home without one of its core cast members? Thank you for watching, and don't worry, I'll be covering seasons 6 to 10 and the straight-to-DVD movies in the next video in this series. If you'd like to see updates on when that will be coming out, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can see when it's up. You'll also be able to see it early, uncut, and ad-free by joining my Patreon page, where you can also listen to exclusive commentaries. I'd just like to say thank you to all of my patrons and members who help support what I do, with an ultra thanks to Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Dent the Air, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Ed Mark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yane, Howard Craig Akervik, and Kajing G. Thank you once again for watching, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.